low.
Oh, okay.
And then for
Nice. Hey, where do you want to stand, Jeremy? Is that okay?
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, that works.
Nice.
I'm just texting Michelle. Can you guys, is the audio okay? Can you hear it okay?
The
Or like
S's
that?
are a bit shitty. Shitty.
Oh, you can hear like some, like that?
Like yeah, popping.
Is it
Just
still?
with the S's. I don't know. Maybe if you turn the mic a bit or something. I don't know.
yeah.
But anyway, we'll laugh about.
Hold on, I'm gonna try something. I want to play with something quickly here because I got sharp S's. Oh, that should have not been good. No, we're good. I gotta get you guys to help me and tell me if this works better. I'm just gonna try something here. Hey, how's it going?
He talks about me.
Well, yeah, we're seeing them tonight because her husband's just retiring from masters after.
Right.
Already some on years, yeah, Brian.
I don't know him.
No. Very,
No, there's some nice kids from that school.
yes,
Kathy Reid, I don't know if she is today.
okay, yeah.
She was very pretty girl. She's still a pretty girl. How's it going, Jack?
It's going good. I'm excited. I haven't got to do this in a long time.
Sorry?
I'm excited. I haven't got to do this in a long time. Like come in and present, and it's fun. And it's been good for me too, because it's kind of gotten me back onto like getting all my thoughts organized, and yeah, every once in a while. And then you start to notice where you like for me, as I kind of went back through and put this all together, I started realizing there's areas you start slacking a little bit, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember I used to do that.
So how big is
Test.
the Amazon office now?
Test. Just one. Hey guys, is that one better? Oh, hold on. Is that better? Test. Yeah, that's good like that. Okay, let's try that. Hold on. Is that okay like that? That's okay? Okay, sweet. There's nothing worse than the bad audio on the Zoom.
No, that's definitely better.
How big is Campbell's now?
I think we're right around 50 or 60 maybe. There, it's tough because there's a few. No, it's actually Brad, and there's a new guy named Paul that started. So Ken's last day is actually on the 15th, and then it'll be Brad and Paul. It's in Kelowna.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what his last name is. I don't think it's Henrik. What is it? I don't know what it is.
Well, maybe Charmaine knows that they beat him. Yeah, maybe. That's very good.
So you don't have anything
Yeah,
to do
he
with
said
like
that
6
long
months or?
No, I'm totally
Yeah.
just in sales. Sorry, one more time, Sharice. Is that okay? Can you hear it okay? Okay, hold on. Making some weird sounds. Here, hold on.
Like, it's not terrible. Don't worry about it.
Let's try this one. Is that better like that? That one's better? I got this thing cranked. Is it frapping or is it okay? Okay.
It's fine.
Okay. All right. That works. I got the thing showing yellow on my side, so I didn't know. It might just be blaring on your guys' side. Oh, now this will be the magic if this works. Let's see.
What's that? Hey, how's Joe today? Like that. Hey, Joe.
There. There.
I know, I was thinking it was going
No.
to be.
I got some stuff on Zoom. I think I got everything figured out. I think so. I even got, look at,
What?
I know. I can point at things. Hey, Doug. How's it going? I'm gonna pick on you if you sit up front.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'll sit here. I'm not really a front row guy.
Never took you for a front row guy. You're in the back. Troublemakers. Maybe give one more minute here.
Thank you, sir. Rocking the reds and the pinks.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. You know, it's funny in the Australian.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are. Said.
Yeah.
Use it there. Yeah.
Sure.
That's it. Makes it look like out of town.
It's good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 I think so.
Yeah. How you been, mate?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really let yourself go, I see.
Stop carrying.
So like COVID weed that you got going on.
Yeah.
You better be good with me, Chris.
So much everything in Heidi. Your little order's a B8.
I what?
Your little order's
Yeah, and it's tuned as well.
It's what?
Tuned.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Puts a little horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because it's not a heavy vehicle.
Not super heavy. Outings are typically a little heavier, but yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Had got some pep in it stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been a good year.
I downsized my truck.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm getting rid of it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Probably okay to get going, hey?
Yeah, I totally do.
No, it's okay. I think I know most of the people that are on here anyway. Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, guys. Let's do this. If you don't mind. You wouldn't mind a standing ovation at the end too, like, just get that whole thing going out of the way. You guys, I'll get jumped into it. So, I talked to Michelle a little while ago, and I'm excited to kind of get back here and present. I used to do this quite a bit. I haven't done it in a couple of years, and I've been really kind of refining the process. So one of the things that's kind of nice is when I can come and kind of teach you stuff, if keeps me accountable to, putting it down, organizing my thoughts, and just a good way for me to get it out. So that's what I wanted to kind of go over today. And when she had sent the email out, one of the things she had mentioned was the process that I follow for the successfully sell your home in 6 weeks or less. And this is the foundational process that I've followed throughout my entire career for the last 10 years since I've been learning this. And one of the things that I would kind of get you guys to look at is this is a lot of the fundamentals, but I think the fundamentals are probably the most important thing that we can kind of take with us into 2024. And it kind of started with this. This is why I've gotten really in depth on refining my process. So I believe that strong listing agents will have one of their best years in 2024. And it's not fluff. There's a reason for that. When I first came into the business in 2009, a lot of the top agents in my market had some of their best years. And the reason was, oh, everything okay? All right. One of the reasons they had some of their best years is coming off 2008, things weren't moving as fast as they were. People started looking for experience, and they started looking for someone that could kind of lead them and sell their home. Plus, a lot of realtors got out of the business. So those two things together, some of the realtors in our office, that was the first year that they ever broke $1 million. And the reason was is that their phone started ringing. One of the things that I've noticed from my personal experience is because of the 6 weeks sold and the advertising I've been doing, I've been getting a lot of calls lately that have been people that were on the market before and were a little frustrated because the last 2-3 years has been kind of, you could put a sign on and get some kind of result. People would go with who they knew or where they could get the best deal. Now you're starting to see expires come up and people are starting to search and do some of their research and homework on. And this process, what I found is even though it's the fundamentals, it's the most important stuff, just like the best shooters in the NBA, the best hitters in baseball, it all comes down to practicing the fundamentals. And then you can kind of build off of that. And when I sit down and I follow this, one of the things that was the question I asked was what makes a strong listing agent? And that's why I decided to focus on this. Because at the end of the day, the strong listing agents that I know, that I've studied, that I've coached with, they all have very strong processes. And a lot of people say, well, they got to be a good negotiator. They've got to be a good communicator. They've got to be able to get people to agree with their price. But all of these are processes. And whether the top listing agents know it or not, they've got a means of how they do it. So if any of you were to sit in front of me in a listing presentation, it might seem like I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I'm starting to present again, but a lot of what I do is pen and paper and I'll have a conversation, but in my mind, I know the process that I follow. I know where it needs to fit in, so I can kind of guide it in a conversational way. And a lot of the top agents that you talk to do this, and a lot of the top teams actually have these processes written out. So that's what I've done since 2013 when I first started doing the Successfully Sell Your Home in 6 weeks or less. I've been starting with a process. I write everything down. And for you, it's one of the things that you could start off when you do a listing presentation, when you price a home, when you do your research for your home. If you start writing down all the steps, you'll see there are patterns that you follow, and you'll see there's certain things that work well and certain things that maybe don't work as well. And you can start to refine that process. What's happening? Can someone not hear me?
Maybe just mute everybody, Jeremy.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. How do I do that?
How do we do that? Do you know?
Yeah, mute. Maybe try clicking on that and then go. I have no idea. Oh, mute participants. That's okay. It only comes up every once in a while.
Oh, no, I meant to
Just
see a
see.
user not muting themselves. I feel like everyone, you should know to mute.
Or unmuted.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm just gonna speak over them.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Okay, so the process. So one more thing I'm just going to put on this as we go kind of go through what this process looks like. So when I had a pretty unique scenario in 2016, I did a campaign called Successfully Sell Your Home in 6 weeks or less. So I started working on it in 2013, and then in 2016, that's where I wanted to kind of bring it public. So what I did, and video wasn't huge at the time. I probably wouldn't do this again because it was kind of stressful, but I put out a video and I said I had this new process. I was going to follow this process, and the market was fairly flat at the time. So I said, I'm going to hire a camera crew, Mastermind Studios, who's one of the biggest production companies in Kamloops, and I'm going to get them to follow me along. And I'm looking for 10 people that will list their home with me. If you've tried before and didn't sell, it's even better. You're going to go through the process. I'm going to document the whole thing. I'm going to put it out for the world to see. And I'm going to try to sell all 10 in less than 6 weeks. And at the time, the average days in Kamloops was about 90 days. And so this is the reason I bring that up. I got the 10 people, they went through the process. I had the camera crew with me. The level of accountability I had, I wasn't taking any listing if they didn't follow the process, and their willingness to follow my process was phenomenal. I never got results like that again. Like I sold 9 of the 10 homes. As soon as the camera crew was off, I went back into my tendencies, which is maybe rush things or skip steps. But when I did those 10, I followed this exact process step by step by step. And a couple of years later, I kind of came back and said, okay, maybe this is just how I have to do business now. That this is kind of the process that I follow, and I can dial it in a little bit or kind of communicate it a little differently. But the more I follow this process, the better the results got. The more you follow the process, the better the results will be for your clients, but also the more referrals you're going to get, word gets out, because now you've got something. And that's what I started to find, is that you really have something just by following the process, because a lot of people don't, and maybe don't even understand these fundamentals. So that's kind of how I lay this out of why I think it's very important. And I would kind of encourage you guys to start documenting your own processes and really get an idea of what works for you and what doesn't, and follow your step-by-step plan. And then you can communicate it with your clients of what your step-by-step plan is. So a couple things to just mention on this. Oh, got all kinds of there. All right, couple key concepts that I want to get across. And these are things to talk with your clients about, because this is what, I mean, whether the market's up or down, this always takes place, but they need to understand this. And it's called market variability, price variability. Now, this is simple, but it's important for them to understand. No two homes have an exact selling price. No two homes will sell for the same price. And in Vernon, I'm sure it's like Kamloops, you've got homes that were built at a certain time, and a lot of them are very similar, and they'll all sell for very similar to the same price. A couple added features here and there, but it's very close. If you fast forward 10 years later, you'll see these massive differences in the selling price, and it's obvious why. Conditions different, upgrades are different. What's happening?
They can't see the slideshow.
They can't see the slideshow.
It's not changing.
What? Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Can you guys see price variability? Really?
No, just your first slide is all we can see.
Oh, sorry guys. Why is that happening? Can you see it now? No.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
on.
now you can see the price variability. Just to, so I don't have to go in, if I click this now. Doug, what's going on, Doug?
Yeah, it's working.
It's working now? All right, so now it switched back and forth. Okay. All right, sorry guys. So back to price variability. This is an important one. This is something I talk with all my sellers ahead of time, and I let them know there's going to be a range for your home. And that range is going to depend on our upgrades, the condition of the home, how we show it, the type of buyer we bring in, and how we negotiate the deal. And if we can kind of control the variables in that, you're going to get a better outcome. This is also a great time to have a conversation of what's actually important to them. Because I've had it where I'll have conversations where they say that getting the highest price is their most important factor. And then you'll find out, well, not if it comes at that much work. There's a lot of, we'd rather just get it on the market and get it sold. And you find out time is more important. But I'm always bringing this up, and I'm having the conversation, because if someone wants to take this the whole way, I'll run the whole process and we'll get this to the top value that we can. But if they don't want to go, I can only take them as far as they want to go. But we want to be aware of it, and we want to be sharing that with our clients. The other thing, I think this gets overlooked a lot from a marketing standpoint, is that one of the other big factors we have is the type of buyer that we bring in when we sell a home. Now, there's going to be different types of buyers for every home, but again, it's obvious when you think about it. If I have an investor that's a deal hunter that's just doing lowball offers and everything he sees, and I have the ideal buyer that sees a ton of value, it's in the right catchment, they know someone on the street, they're going to pay completely different prices. And so as marketing professionals, what we always want to be looking at is who is our ideal buyer. And really none of this marketing, this process should really begin without that being in mind. Before I start any marketing or do anything, I want to know who is the ideal buyer for this, because I'm going to tailor this whole thing around the ideal buyer. That's how we really position for the top of the range. Now, one other thing too, guys, just, I'll share all these slides with you. So I'll send an email out. So if you want to go back. And then this is simple. And this is when this is kind of the foundation. This is what I was first taught in 2013. This is the 4 steps to the most effective selling process. And we can add things to it, but really this is the meat and potatoes. If we can prepare the home effectively, price to the market effectively, and negotiate from a position of strength. If we can do those 4 things for a seller, we'll automatically be shooting for the top end of that range. And what I'll do now is kind of go into what the most important concepts, I believe, of each of those aspects are, and why I do them. And this is what I run through my head when I'm listing a home. So everything kind of starts for me with the home preparation. I'm trying to figure out, okay, where's the best money going to be started, and where are we going to focus our funds and focus our efforts? But there's again a process for how we do this, because we don't just start with kitchen renovations. We start with what's the overall foundation of the home, what are the deal killers? And I see this sometimes. You see these fantastic kitchens where they just did this new renovation, but the roof is completely shot or the furnace is on its last legs. You're not going to get the same value as kind of reversing that and starting with the foundation first. Now, when I'm looking for that, the step one is I identify potential deal killers. And I'll talk to the sellers. There's 5 steps that we're going to go through. Here's the first one we want to look at. Best money we can spend. What's the overall structure of this home? What kind of deal killers are going to come up down the line for us? A great way to do this is if you can get your sellers to pre-inspect their homes. Because a pre-inspection is going to tell you everything you need to know about it. And if you have a good inspector, not only is it going to tell you everything you need to know, but it's going to give you the ability to either repair at your cost ahead of time or disclose and price accordingly. Now, a little story on this one. I've had a very good scenario which showed the power of these pre-inspections. It was when I was first starting to use them and my seller paid for the pre-inspection. I was just caught, things were a little bit busy. We got an offer. I didn't share the pre-inspection with the buyer. We went to a multiple offer. So as you guys know, buyer's remorse is at an all-time high when a multiple offer comes in. We got to the second to last day, and all of a sudden I get an email from the realtor saying that we found this issue. There's a deck. There was some rot that was found on the fascia, and we're concerned about some electrical things. So we want $4,500 off the price. And I was confused because I'd gone through the whole inspection, and I went through and I didn't email the realtor the inspection report. So I politely said, I'm very sorry. Here's the inspection report. I understand everybody wants to get the best deal, but we did have this looked at. The electrical is this, and I told them which pages to check on. And it went silent. I got subject removals back about 2 hours later, and the realtor about 2 weeks later started talking to me again. But it was like one of those kind of gotcha moments that I didn't mean to actually have, but it just shows that once you're kind of in it, there's always a secondary negotiation that has the potential to come up at the very end, and we want to get ahead of that now. One more scenario that I'll tell about this, because I know one of the biggest things that people will push back on is, well, why would I find everything wrong with the home and then just give it to a buyer? And it's because we kind of talked about it at your own cost, but also if I'm now pricing accordingly, I can get engineers reports, I can get everything I need. So one more example, when I was on a place out in Dallas, they had actual foundational issues. There was, it was starting to crack downstairs. So we had a structural engineer come in. We got quotes. It was about a $35,000 to $40,000 price tag to get it finished. They didn't want to do it. So we dropped their price by $25,000. We became the best deal on the market. We disclosed all the information. They still got $15,000 more. And imagine how that played out at the end of the negotiation. And even worse, and this is where I was really sold on it. Now that comes up and they collapse the sale because it scares them because they don't have 40,000. I have to go back to market and disclose it's because of foundational issues. So you're playing too many variables to not take care of this. Now, one thing I would kind of, again, share with you, my sellers typically, when I started doing this, would pay for the pre-inspection and I would reimburse them. Another way you can do it is I did work a deal with an inspector. I've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years now. I took my numbers and I said, I sell on average, I think at the time it was about 94% of the listings I take. So what if we, for a buffer of error, say that number is 75%, will you pre-inspect all my homes, come back a secondary time, I'll market your company, I'll promote it, and I'll pay you 25% more for each listing that I sell. But if I don't sell, I don't pay you. And we'll do every like 5 or 6 deals and we'll kind of look at this. That way, if I keep my margins where they are and I'm selling 94%, you'll actually make more and get free marketing. And if I dip under 75%, we can adjust the pricing. So he went for it. He loved it. All of a sudden, now I have this tool. I just increased my listing commission by the $600. So I started doing it wasn't quite, it was 6.5 and 3 instead of 6 and 3. But I could pre-inspect all my homes. And it was just one more kind of value add. It got me more referrals later on. And it was just kind of neat because I could offer that within my marketing package. So that's something you can consider as well. But again, roof, we're looking for the deal killer. Step 2, once that's done, is obviously the curb appeal test. Like a lot of people overlook this. And when I talk to the seller, this is your one chance for a first impression. So if we're going to get the place prepared, let's do the curb appeal test. And I'll take them out with me. And I'll say, let's take a look at your home and figure out where we can really make this shine, because the buyers are going to pull up, they're going to see this first. And then I let them point out what things, people are always more critical on their home than we are. They see things that we don't see. So they'll start pointing out stuff that maybe doesn't matter. But what I'm kind of interested in is engaging them to get them to help me come up with this list, because this is all about teamwork. And it's amazing how much extra value people see when you start taking this time with them, because it shows that if you pay attention to these details, you're paying attention to all the details. So 30-second curb appeal test, that's the second place on the preparation. Third thing is your entryway test and room by room. And again, walking through the cellar. This is part of the process. I let them know when we're doing the listing, but after I've got the listing, this is what's going to happen. And I do this with them. I'll walk them through. As we go room by room, I'm looking for work. I'm looking for paint that needs to be redone, like holes in the walls. I'm looking for missing baseboards. I'm looking for fixtures. I'm looking for missing electrical outlets. I'm looking for anything that the buyer sees work. Because if they see work room by room, that's going to compound over time. I don't want them to see any work if we don't need to. So that's what I'm looking at with the seller as I'm going through. And I tell them that this is what we're looking at. What do you see? And I let them point it out. Let them guide, and you're just kind of going through, and you'll get a ton of cooperation from them, and they'll tell you whether they're willing to do it or not. And don't push if they don't. Like, not everyone wants to replace all their flooring. This is where that price variability comes in. So you kind of have to meet them where they're at, but give them the option. This would be some things that I might see as well. Now, kind of simultaneously while I'm doing step 3, I'm doing step 4. And this is kind of staging and cleaning. And again, when we're preparing a home, this is some of the best ROI you're going to get. And because I've already got them in the mindset that we're doing this together, this kind of leads in. It's a little tougher when you sit down here, when you sit down with someone and say, you need to clean this house up. But because they're already in the mindset and you're kind of going through, and I've already explained, while we're doing this, we're going to be looking at areas that we can kind of stage and clean, because buyers are going to come through with a fairly critical eye. And they're going to be looking. I had one client, by the way, was a buyer. Every house we went into, he would go to the door jambs and he would skiff the top of his finger to see if it was dirty. And his reason was, he's like, I can see what they want me to see. I want to know what they don't want me to see. So it was an interesting guy. I've never had anyone else do that, but it's like, I share that story with them. Like, some buyers, they want to know. And so if we can clean the whole place up, it just has an overall fit. You've walked into those homes where they just feel good. And it's because they took the time. They cleaned under the couch. They clean the areas that even the buyer's not going to look at. So we just do the best that we can with that. When it comes to staging, I sometimes will hire a professional. If I do hire a professional, it's rare I do, but if I do hire a professional, I get them to come in and I'll pay for the advisement. She charges me about $150. She does an hour of work, and she gives them a checklist of what they should do, color schemes. They can kind of pulls it all together. Then if they want her to actually come in and stage, then I say, this is kind of on you if you want to pay. But if you want that kind of level, I can bring in an advisor. 9 times out of 10, though, I don't. I just work with what they have. And what I'm looking at when I'm looking at staging is I'm looking at each room and does the furniture fit the room, and is there a flow? Because I don't want doors to hit drawers when it opens up. I don't want to feel cramped. If I want to get through the room, I want to be able to get through the whole room and see all aspects. So we're looking for paths, walkways, and we're just getting rid of any bulk that we have, decluttering. I mean, these are all things you guys know, but you'll notice that you know it. But to tell someone to do it is a lot harder than walking with them and letting them kind of guide and having that collaboration. So made a huge difference. And I found that I could take care of a lot of the staging. The only time I really hire stagers myself or recommend that we do is if there's just rooms that don't make sense. And an example of that was a place that I sold up on Copper. I couldn't make sense of this room. I don't know what the builder was thinking. It was like a big B, the whole level. And the living room was the smallest portion of the B. And then there was this big kind of open area. And then there was the kitchen that had its own dining room, and I couldn't figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out. So what they tried to do is make this huge living room, and it just looked weird. Like the TV was here and you're like a football field away. And they're like, we just never knew how to set this room up. So we hired a stager, and she's like, well, they're 2 separate rooms. The living room needs smaller furniture. So we brought furniture from upstairs. This is your sitting room. This is where you watch TV. This is the family room. This is a reading area. And they put a nest, one of those big nest chairs. Had a lamp, set up some books. It looked really nice. And it made a lot of sense and to break it up. But those types of things I'll leave to the professionals, because I don't see that. That's good. And then step 5 comes to strategic renovations. And when someone asks me, do you think we should renovate the kitchen? This is where I'll have, like, we got a few steps to do before we get there. Now we've got to step 5. Do we renovate the kitchen? Well, the question at that point becomes, how much money do we have to invest, and what are the buyers going to expect? So I try to stay completely unemotional when people ask me about a renovation. I mean, I know kitchens and bathrooms are going to be some of your best returns, but I'm not going to put granite in a countertop because I like granite if the buyer's not expecting granite. So what I like to do at this point is say, okay, if we're going to make it, I'm not a designer, but I know buyers. So let's take a look at what's been selling in your price point. And let's take a look at what those had for features. And then we can decide how we should renovate. Because if a Home Depot kitchen works with Arborite, let's do that instead of the granite. Now, if we want the wow factor, but these are conversations I have with them. I don't want to pin myself because I'm not going to tell someone to spend 30 grand and then not get the buyer interest. And then I own that. So I just give them advice and advisement on this is what buyers have been typically expecting in this price point. Now, if you want to take that step, we can. And you can have some fun with it from there. Like, you know, this is where you really start to, like, I've had homes that by the time we were done, it was almost 60 days before they were ready to go to market because they wanted to do everything. They wanted to do the full renovation. I always suggest get an interior designer, get someone that knows colors and everything. I can just give you the information. And this is what a top tier kitchen will look like. And this is what these homes are typically selling for if we do that. Step 2 is the marketing. Every 5 years, NAR, they're still around next year. We'll do a new one. But in 2019, the internet search was 50% of where buyers found their homes. Real estate agents was 28%. Yard sign or open house sign driving by, 7%. Friend, relative, or neighbor was 7%. Home builder or their agent was 5%. Directly from the seller was 3%. And then 0.5% was from printer and newspaper ad. So these are from buyers that were surveyed by the National Association of Realtors in the US. We don't have the same kind of stats here, but it still gives you an idea of how big of a difference it's made. Half of your buyers are online. I mean, it makes sense. And it's probably more now. But in 2019, half of them were online. 28% found their home through a real estate agent. So there's your two biggest markets, other real estate agents and the internet. So when we do an effective marketing strategy, we want to focus there. And then we can spread out to the other ones. But 78% of the pie is in those two things. So before we go forward, the first thing is ideal buyer targeting. Now, this comes down to a couple of components, but one of the first things I like to start with is the seller and who they were and where they were when they bought the house. Because that'll usually tell you a little bit of an idea of who the best buyer is going to be for this, because they obviously bought it for a reason. Now, you will hit some dead ends with this because sometimes they just bought it because it was the only one that was on the market and they hate it and now they want to move. But if you happen to have a good story, it can lead you in the line. We love that it was in this catchment. We love that from the kitchen. We could see the living, or we could see the yard, see the kids play. We had young kids at the time. Whatever it is that they give you, it can kind of start the process of figuring out who are we going to target this to. And once we know our ideal our ideal buyer, now we can actually start to focus on how we're going to engage those buyers. Photography is a big one. Videography is another one, but photography still trumps it. I mean, video is important. A lot of people consume through video. People like it as a secondary, but at the end of the day, if you look at the stats, photography is the most important, especially that first shot. So some kind of captivating photography. Now, nowadays, iPhones do a lot. I just never had an eye for it, so I do hire a professional to do my photos. I've always felt it was money well spent. But the nice thing that I have with my photographer and kind of some basic principles is the photos to me should be from certain angles. I like to go corner to corner. I like to tell the story. So one thing that I see a lot of realtors do that just in my mind kind of drives me nuts. I don't personally like when there's like 90 photos of a home. And the reason is, I don't know if you guys have ever gone through it, but when it takes you 9 slides to get out of the kitchen, you lose interest. It's unengaging. To me, the photos is like the highlight reel. I'm giving you like the trailer to the home. I want to sell it the best that I can. So I want to flow and I want to think about the client's experience when they're going through. If you have 90 photos, we always have the ability to get the additional photos link, or they can contact you for additional photos. It gives some reason for them to engage and you to send it back. But for me, I'm usually on an average house, maybe I'll go as low as like 9 to 11 sometimes, maybe 15 to 20 if it's a bigger home. And then I'll have that link. If you want additional photos, I can send it to you. The second thing that I see, just personal opinion. Everything here is just personal opinion. I like to start with the outside of the home. The only reason is that for me, that I've paid attention to my own experience. If I see a home that starts with a kitchen, even if it's a beautiful kitchen, it's so out of the ordinary of what you see in your flow. You're so used to seeing the exterior shot that it kind of plants that seed of, is there something wrong with the exterior? And sometimes you go through and no, it's beautiful. They just started with the kitchen because it was the main feature. And I know this is again, personal preference. I like to start with an exterior shot. I like to get as much of the house in frame as I can. And the biggest thing, and I've gone through many photographers because of this, I found one that I really like and I stick with them, is I never oversell on the photos. That's the worst, because you got to remember at some point these guys are going to show up to your house and take a look. And if they show up and you've hidden the steep driveway, they're immediately turned off. Like you can't come back from that disappointment. If they get into the backyard and it's a busy highway and you shot it so that you didn't show that, or it's a tiny yard that you made look like a park. I mean, none of this is easy to overcome. And as realtors showing, you know, that feeling where your buyer is so excited and goes completely unengaged. And they may have still been interested, but it's hard to overcome disappointment. So the 10 mil lens that makes it look like a park is just something I try to really stay ahead of or away from. And then one more thing is a tailored write-up. So this is why the ideal buyer is so important. I don't write my write-up. I know we've got ChatGPT and stuff. I'm a little archaic. I've kind of filed behind on that. I haven't used it that much. I've used it once or twice, but I still go old school and write my own write-ups. The reason I like to do it is not because I have the best write-ups, but because I can picture the person across the table from me and I write it as if I'm talking to them. Because if it's an investor, I'm obviously talking a lot different than a first-time home buyer than I am to say like a downsizer. These are all different types of buyers. My write-up should be talking to them in their language, exactly how I would explain it if I was sitting across the table from them. And one of the other things you guys will notice on MLS, you got one line. If you're on MLS, you have one line and it says read more. So that first line should hit the best point and it should be tailored towards that type of buyer. You want to catch them within the first line. And then we go to pricing to the market. Now, there's a lot of different pricing strategies, but what I've found for me is that I've kind of fallen into two or three. I call them the big three. There's three that I tend to always pull out. I talk to the buyers about it. If I want to get creative, I maybe get into some other stuff, but these three will basically cover you. And it's a great place to start with your seller and a great place for you to start thinking about pricing. So the effective pricing strategy, the things that we're trying to do with that, obviously when I'm communicating with the seller, I want them to know what I know. So when I do my pricing, and this works wonders. If you sit down with your client, you can bring it with you secondary, don't bring a predetermined comparative market analysis with all your comparables, because I can make any home seem like any price if I want to do my research and twist the numbers. They're not going to trust you. Then it becomes a battle. I might have something to leave them with, but I'm pulling up my laptop. I'll ask them for their Wi-Fi or a hotspot to my phone, and I show my work. Just like a magician showing there's nothing up their sleeves. I will go through the comparable listings with them. I will show them why I thought something was or was not a good comparable, and then I will delete it. And I'll work my way down till I get to the 6 or 7 that I actually use for my listing. It makes a huge difference. It makes them feel totally involved and informed. And not just psychologically, physically, you need to turn yourself across the table and sit on the same side and say, this screen is the market. This is what we're dealing with. It's you and I versus the market. So let's figure out where we're going to price this. One more little thing on this. I've gotten used to my listing presentations take about 2 hours. It's work, but it saves so much time down the line. And I tell the sellers ahead of time, it's going to take some time, but you need to know what I know. Because if I pick a pricing strategy, it could be the best one in the world. But if you think it's too low and we sell in 2 days, you're not going to like me. You're going to get some thoughts, especially if I leave the house and a neighbor or a friend comes and asks them why their pricing so low. You're dead in the water. I've lost so many clients that trust that way because you're never really in the same place afterwards. If you get out of there and you get the listing and they talk to a friend or family member, you might not even hear about it, but they planted that little bit of doubt. And then you have a frenzy, you get that multiple offer and they don't want to, they just kind of engage. They'll still smile, but in the back of their mind, they're like, yeah, you kind of hosed me a little bit. So don't fall into that trap. Make sure that they know and make sure they understand that's why. And the worst thing for me is when someone says, just tell us what the price is. Say, I would, but I can't. And this is why. I need you to go through this. This is your home. You got it. Just humor me. I'll make it fast. And we go through listing by listing until we get down to the 6. Once we have the 6, we should have done 3 things. We should have figured out what we're better than, what we're not better than, and kind of what we're competing with. Because that's, again, a little tidbit, but it makes a big difference. I had a tendency to tell them everything we were better than because it's fun saying you're worth more than this, you're worth more than this. If you don't cap that, expectation just shoots to the roof. So then, okay, what are some things that maybe we aren't better than? And what you want to typically get to is weight classes. In Kamloops, we have basically a weight class every $25,000. After about 900, it goes about 50,000. What I mean by a weight class is someone that's looking between up to 725,000 isn't necessarily looking up to 750,000. So if I'm going to price this in a $700,000 to $725,000 range, there's a portion of those buyers that can't afford more or aren't looking higher than that. So now I can control who I'm competing with. If you get to 750, now you're everything 725 to 750. So weight classes make a big difference, and that's what we're trying to figure out. What weight class do we fall into?
So realtor.ca, after 500 grand is 50,000 increments.
Yeah,
So 50,000.
PCS. Do you guys still have PCS here? Oh, okay,
So from 500 grand to $1 million, it's $50,000 increments.
right.
And after $1 million, it's 100,000. And prior to 500,000, it's 25,000. So
Interesting.
if you have on realtor.ca, we can search for whatever we want. But I had a client wanted to price his home at 709. I said, go 699. You're gonna miss somebody's can't price out. So that's just how our clients can shop.
That's it. That's interesting
Yeah.
because so we have something called private client service in Kamloops. And the reason I know about the $25,000 increments is that when someone signs up under PCS, they get their realtor to input and they can put any amount they want. And it's always interesting when you're on the market at 750, I can actually simulate what does 725 look like, what is 699, and it's like clockwork. I'll take a $900,000 listing, and every 25,000 you get a boost, and then $100,000 marks, or you get huge boosts. So like you said,
the prospective buyer that isn't working with an agent use that.
no, that's only for the agents, but it's only like solid data I have.
Right.
But here's the thing though, that it makes sense about the 100,000 is that, okay, so let's say that I'm doing this and I take a look. So under 700,000 in Kamloops probably has like a 40% increase. That's a big number, 700 to 699. So if I'm going to match with 1,500 buyers at 709, and I'm going to match with 2,000 buyers at 699, I'm not only am I getting $500 more buyers, but I'm getting 500 more buyers that aren't competing with anything over 700. So if I'm the best deal under that, I position myself for the 1,500 to bring me up over 700, and at least the 500 to feel like I'm the best deal. So those little cutoffs do make, like you say, a huge difference. Did they end up going to 699 or did they go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it made a huge difference on the marketing. So
Their bottom line was quite a bit lower, and
yeah,
the fair value was 699. That worked out.
Yeah.
So for 689.
Yeah, it's a big difference. So weight classes makes it, and the sellers will understand that too as you start to talk about it. Like,
Can I ask a question, Jeremy?
yeah,
I use the same strategy as you, when I sit down with the sellers, I show them like what's on the market, what's sold. And we sort of fit where they belong, kind of price strategy wise. But I just recently had a client this year who I went through that process and they felt their home was like way better than.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time trying to explain to them that, well, no, actually your home is probably here. So they were looking at homes that, had granite countertops. They didn't, those sort of things. And they felt their home should be priced more than those ones. How would you how do you bring their expectations down? Like your house isn't up here.
I booked showings on them and I brought my clients through, and then it opened their eyes when they were physically in it.
Well, yeah, so that's when we ended up doing price it really high, and then we had like, I don't know how many showings, and everybody was like, they're so overpriced. But before, like, how can I price?
I know what you're saying. It's bring through. It's okay. It's a lag measure though, because now we've gone to market, and the issue is and I'm not saying that's a bad strategy. I'm just saying the reason because I've thought of that too. Your first 2 to 4 weeks, really your 6 weeks. So my 6 weeks sold was for a reason. Your first 6 weeks is like your best chance. And if you waste to get to where your number is, your first 2 or 3 weeks, you just wasted your best buyers. Your fresh floor.
Like before you list it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. Okay, yeah. So that's one way to do it. Yeah, I see. Okay, so before you go to market.
Them to know that there's
Yeah.
a potential buyer.
Yeah. But that I see what you're saying. So yeah, so you're not burning through. So that is one way. So how I do it, and it's worked well for me, is when I take a listing, I've had it happen where I've told people you're not going to get that price, and then they get the price 2 weeks later, and I had to make the call like, I'm glad you didn't list with me. You got the price, because I don't have a crystal ball. But I've also had it where I've taken the listing, blown through the prices, and just kind of drug them through and did that. Told you so. Like I told you so. Let's get down. What I do now is I say, okay, I get it. I get where you guys are at. You're seeing the same comparables as I am. Here's the issue is that when we leave here, I need to be mentally strong enough to actually stand by whatever price we go in, because that's what you're hiring me to do as your agent. And if I get out there and all I have for ammo is the seller wanted to bring an offer, I mean, the buyers have never been as informed as they are right now, which means if someone's going to overpay, they're going to overpay because they're choosing to overpay. And that percentage of the market that's just sold their house and is okay to overpay is there, but it's very limited. So the thing that I run into a lot that I never want to be was the realtor that got out of here and didn't feel 100% secure in the price, because then I'm going to go out and this is all I'm going to have to work with. So help me get there, mentally help me get there. Why are we going to go at 780? I'm going to get the call from the realtor tomorrow or the buyer. They're going to ask why we're $60,000 more. Why? And as long as you don't challenge them, and this is a conversation, usually the whole thing kind of breaks apart, because they'll get to, well, we just want it. And I'm like, I totally understand that. I get it. But here's where this could play out. And as your realtor, I can't represent you. And so it's just been a policy of mine. If I can't defend the price, you're better off to list with someone else that believes in it, because I won't get it. I'm just going to waste your time. And then we usually carry in. That's how I will usually approach it. And the other thing too, though, and this is, again, like, I don't know it all. I have had people convince me of the extra 60,000. Like, I'm very convincible. But that's okay. Like, I've had people convince me, and I've had it play out. Perfect example is my uncle. He's an old Italian guy. And when he built his house, he was like, I put so much money into this. I'm like, yeah, you can't see it. Like, you can't price $100,000 more than everything else. People don't see it. He's like, somebody will. And he started telling me everything he did, the bigger overhangs, the rock work, the lifetime work on the windows. I was like, the only thing I could think of is a builder. Like, that's the person that's going to see it. They're going to love your lot because there's no other lots like it. They're going to see all the work you went in. They know they can't build it. They'll have an eye for quality. We could go after that person, but I don't know how long it's going to take. And he's like, that's fine. It's like, let's do it. As long as everyone's eyes are open, let's go and find the builder. And it took 8 months, but we got it. And I didn't get a told you so either, because the nice thing was as month by month went by, I'd have the conversation. I'd be like, are you getting impatient yet? Are we? No, we can stick it out. I'm good. Okay. We had good, like, our relationship's still really strong today because we were both on the same line and we knew who we were targeting, and there was a good chance. And that's what I would tell people.
Would you have told him you couldn't represent him if he wasn't your uncle?
No. I would have. I try to, like, when it comes to family members, I try to really treat them the same as anyone else. In fact, more so. That's probably the toughest thing, is when it's a family member and they want to be unrealistic, because, like, I'm like, I almost get more.
I have a soft spot for that piece.
Yeah.
So I think my family.
Yeah, well, I get it. And it's, but again, how this plays out, right? Like, I have to put that relationship away because you're hiring me to be a professional and you're paying me a lot of money to do it. And so if I'm going to represent you properly, I have to do it the best I can, because otherwise, like, it's going to be awkward at Thanksgiving dinner if we don't do this. So I make myself be more blunt. So I would have done that with anybody. The only one I wouldn't have done that is if I didn't like the person, because that just gets too draining. If we don't have a mesh and I'm like, I don't want this person in my life for 6 to 8 months, I'll just shoot for it. Okay, so that's kind of the basics on the pricing strategy. Now, the three that I go with, and this is one I usually talk about the most, is seam line pricing. So seam line pricing is a strategy to, if it's balanced or an inclining market, it's your ability to become the best value on the market and outperform the last sales. So how it works is, if you can find a fairly reasonable seam of the last sales and a fairly reasonable seam, you'll notice most of the time, especially in Canada, it's about 3 to 5%. The active listings are priced higher than the most recent sales. And then they negotiate and they come down there 2.5 or 3%. So what you can do with a seam line is, when you see this, say, okay, if we price a little above the most recent sales, a little under the active listings, we become the best value, and we're going to outperform the last 90 days of inventory. So we become the highest resale. It's a great positioning. It'll put you in the best possible position. In an inclining market, it has the ability to bring it up. In the balanced market, it allows you to outperform the last sales and still.
You'd introduce this
way back, yeah.
chat, after you've narrowed down your CMA.
Yeah. So this is the information, and usually by this point, I just talk to people about it. I've got 3 major pricing strategies that I'll do. I think this is going to be our most effective. It's called a seam line. Here's what it is, and I'll talk to them about it. It's amazing, like, because putting this all together, I started thinking, like, what is it that actually makes these things work. And when it's explaining these concepts that probably were never explained. So when I'm talking to them, I started realizing the other 3 or 4 realtors when I was competing that were talking to them about this didn't mention this stuff. So even though this is stuff that's normal to us, it's not so normal to them. So by bringing it up, you stand out and they start to trust your opinion a lot more. Prestige pricing strategy. This is the opposite, but this is something that's awesome about your home that makes it stand out. So with my uncle's home, the prestige pricing was all the stuff that he put in. We had the feature sheet. People will call and question, well, I'm glad you asked. This is why we're asking an extra 100,000. And this is the type of buyer that I think would really like this type of home. Another example was a place that it was a really unique layout in a strata and a really unique positioning. And all the comparables were like, at the time, this is going back a little ways, but they were like 389 to 399. So we intentionally put 415. And the reason we put 415 is we were the only one with a 4, and it made a lot of people curious. I had realtors actually call me like, why are you there? And I'm like, you know what, this is why. And this is where we're sitting. And I'm glad that you asked, because this is not like these other units. And I think if those other units are worth that, we're probably the best deal on the market. It gives you a chance to sell, and it's going to highlight. So it's like the red carpet. And then the last one is the launch pad. And the launch pad, so in the prestige, you're usually looking into a balanced or inclining typically, unless you have something really good that you want to stand out. Launch pad, you're going to be in usually a balanced, can work in an inclining, works really well in a declining. And the reason it works so well in a declining market is that if you take a look, when a market's declining, you guys saw this over the last year, it doesn't just all happen in one shot. It happens sale by sale by sale. It starts to, and the reason is you have a refresh rate of new listings that are coming on. One person gets motivated, sells for a price. Now this is the benchmark, and everybody drops and they resaturate the price. Then the next person gets, and it becomes a race to the bottom. So I usually look at the launch pad of like, let's get you out before this happens. Because if I see 6 or 7 listings that are holding for a price, let's get in, get under them. Let's be the first one out. And then you guys get your money. We can move on and we'll let the market fall behind you. So that's when I want to eject. In a balanced market or an inclining market, it's just, you guys have done this. It's the multiple offer strategy. You become a price. This got overused so much in the last 3 years where you would see prices. You're like, that's not even the real price. This is so ridiculous. This is $100,000 under where it's supposed to be, but it was a way to kind of mask what it was actually worth and just ask the market, how crazy do you want to go? So I like balanced and declining. And then the very last thing, how are we doing timeline wise? Okay, weird. Very last thing is the negotiation. And the great negotiation strategy starts before the offer. So when I'm talking to the client about it, and in my own mind, we're preparing for the negotiation by looking at the potential deal killers. We're preparing for the negotiation by looking at our positioning and our pricing. If those things are done, the home is prepared, we're priced right, we're positioned right, and we know our competition, we've done 90% of the negotiation already. Now we're down to the last 10%, which is bridging the gap. And when we're bridging the gap, there's a few big principles that I like to focus on with the negotiation. The first one, and this is kind of the aha moment for me, and I talk to clients ahead of time about this and while we're doing the negotiation. I understand everybody's got a different negotiating style. I ask if they know theirs, and I say, if they're if you get a counter offer, how fast are you going to want to respond? And they're like, well, we kind of know our price, we'll respond right away. I'm like, okay, well, you're a quick start. You're going to be driven up the wall if we come across a patient buyer, because we're going to counter them. It's going to take them 24 hours to get back to us because they like to overthink everything. So we have to prepare ahead of that and set expectations. Some people aren't going to give us the answer right away, and we don't want to panic when we haven't heard after 2 hours if their style is slow. Contrasting is the other way. When you try to push a slow negotiator to get it done, they just feel impatient as well. So if they're a slow negotiator and they're going to take some time, I'll set the expectation on that. And a lot of times it works in their favor. Sometimes a little bit of time is all you really need to get that buyer up. But the point of this is just to have the conscious focus on what is the style and kind of communicating that and kind of getting an awareness when you're talking to them. You get to know what different realtors are like. So you know their style, you know how they're going to act. And this all becomes information for you once you start to be aware of it. Reason I put this as an important slide is I wasn't before, and I would just run into everything trying to do it the same way, and it doesn't work in every scenario. And all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of impatient people. Second thing, and I put the kids here, and I chose this photo for a reason, because this is the superpower I feel like, and this maybe just is my style. Everyone's got their own style. What I would say about your own style is whatever's authentic to you, be that. I'm not a pushy salesman or a pushy negotiator. I'm not a bully negotiator. I know people that are, and they're amazing at it. And it's because they're genuinely amazing at it. I'm sure you guys have also seen the contrast when you deal with someone that's not, and they're just acting in a way that they think a top producer should. And it just drives you nuts. When people are just trying to be bullies because they're not used to it, so you have to be authentic to what your style is. I'm a collaborative style. So I've got a very childlike curiosity when I'm talking to other realtors. It's very disarming. And it also gets me information sometimes that helps bridge. So like my son, for instance, I've got 2 kids, 8 and 5. It took me a little while when I first had kids to figure out these were okay questions. Why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? And why is the atmosphere? And they were asking these questions constantly going down. And you get, at first you kind of get, it just is what it is. And then I started realizing, no, this is okay. Like, let's look at this. Why is the grass green? I don't know. And you start to get that childlike curiosity. I bring that into my negotiations because you would be surprised when you have a genuine curiosity of why they chose that home. Like, why specifically did they chose their home? What's their scenario? And you get in a disarming way, you'll get information that will help bridge these deals. Now, it's not a predator mind. It's interesting when you find out information, like their kids go to a certain catchment and you're the only one that's in that catchment. It becomes good information for you to have. But I also know that this works for them too. Like, I want to create kind of a win-win. I know they want this home. So as strong as they're saying, they're probably not as strong as they are because they don't have that many choices. Yeah, another one, I haven't done this, but it was really interesting. I'd never seen this actually play out. I had a seller recently actually, and we had an offer and the market was a little bit soft. And they had put their offer in and told us they were moving from Kitimat. And he was a very patient, slow negotiator. So we got the offer, we went back and forth. They said we're firm and final. And my guy's like, okay, I'm going to take the night to think about it. I was like, okay. So he took the night and he calls me the next morning. He's like, you know what? Last night I was going to go with their price, but now I'm not. I'm like, okay, why is that? He's like, because I pulled up their address in Kitimat and it is exactly this home. And they're moving now from Kitimat. We know they're in this catchment. There's only 3 homes, but we're the only one with a pool. We're the only one that has that layout. This is their house from Kitimat here. I want to hold firm. I was like, are you sure? Like, this is a bit of a gamble just because they have a nostalgia. I don't know if they'll go. He wanted to, so we went, and they ended up coming like $60,000 higher than what their thing was. And it was an interesting way. And I've never done it since then, but it's all information. It's all curious. Like, why are they? The seller did it himself. Yeah. He pulled it up on realtor.ca and pulled the information and took a look at it. So it's all information. But again, being a collaborative negotiator, I probably wouldn't have gone that strategy because that's kind of it's a tough one, right? You're really speculating at that point. For me, it's like, let's bridge this, let's get this together. The buyer and seller are not enemies. Me and the realtor are not enemies. Let's bridge this in. And if I can get some good information that helps ease that, then I've done my job. And the last thing is your best action. So this is pretty much the last slide, but it's an important one. Now, when you're identifying your next best action, my clients, I started following up, just seeing like, what did you guys like best about the experience? I'm just kind of curious because I'm trying to get better. This is something that came up a lot. The next best action was when we would negotiate and we would talk through, okay, we're going to do this, but what's the next best action after that? What's the next? So if they don't come to our price, or if they're firm here and we let this deal go, what is the next best action? And we'd have these conversations. So like an example might be, well, we're at 725 and their offer is 680 and we think that's a little low. So we would rather go to 699.9 and test the market than accept 680 and just hope that that was the right price. Okay, well then we know that if this doesn't come over 700, then we're going to take that next action. So let's take the pressure off and this is our market. A lot of times if there is no next best action, like with my seller, the one that pulled the Kitimat home, he's like, you know what, I'm not in a huge rush, I can wait it out. Okay, well then that's a good next step. But if you don't get it, we'll wait it out. The market maybe will incline down the road. But just by taking this time to have this conversation with the seller, it unlocks something in them where you're kind of together on this and you're kind of talking this through. Okay, if this, then that, if this, then that. It was amazing how many people came back and said, I really like that because I hate negotiating and I didn't know if I was making the right choice. And it was always hard for me to like get to that point. But like by setting out, this is going to be our price and we're going to get, and I usually don't go too many steps ahead, but here's one thing that I like to do. sometimes you have people, this is just an example, that will give you nothing in the negotiation. You have no idea where they're at. They just send over an offer and you just have no idea. So best guess, especially if it's a tight lip realtor that won't answer their phone, is they want to meet in the middle, but we don't really know. So let's assume that the middle ground is where we want to end up. Well, we're not going to know whether they're going to go to the middle ground until we make a counter and read what their counter comes back at. So on the next best, we say, okay, if 675 is the middle ground, we need to test this thing out. Are we happy at 675? Yeah, we are. Okay, well, we need to put out almost like a flare at 685, 690, something like that, and gauge what their next move is, because that's the only information we're going to get. And they say, okay, so let's take this step. Let's see how they counter. Then let's collaborate or recoup and look at where we're at and make our next step from there. It takes a lot of the stress out. I don't know if you've ever had someone that's guided you like that, but just getting to the next best action and not overthinking the entire negotiation. Let's get here and then make our next decision. Just takes a ton of the anxiety away. And it's a strategy that's worked really well. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback on. Okay, so that's it. Cut out of the screen a little bit. So just in summary, and again, I'll share this slide with you guys, but prepare the home in the 5 steps, market to the ideal buyer, price the market using the big 3 pricing, negotiate informed with focus on the next best action, and master the fundamentals, and then use your creativity to build from here. And the reason I put that last one in is that this is the foundation. And if you just do this, it's gonna be excellent. But from there, now you can kind of start to get creative. Like, for example, one of the things that I did that was one of my best marketing polls, like I got the most action off of it, is I started doing what's called a contractor enhancement program. And the contractor enhancement program, I had a really good contractor that I said, hey, would you be willing to do this? If someone has equity in the home, would you do the renovations so that they can sell it with that? And we'll get a contract done up by a lawyer that says that if they pull off the market, like you'll get paid by a charge on title. They allow you to put the charge on title. You charge your normal fee plus a 10%. And he's like, yeah, I love that deal. And he was the right person to fit with it. So we put that out there and I started advertising that. And we did about 5 or 6 projects before he got too busy and couldn't do it anymore. But that was not some like I say about the fundamentals, that wasn't some creative idea that just came out of nowhere. That was my 5 steps and realizing we would get to strategic renovations. And there were a lot of people that wanted to do stuff that would do better, but didn't have the money to do it. So it came an essential out of the fundamentals. It's the same reason that I did the pre-inspection deal that I did. Every single thing that I put out has something to do with this foundation, which is why I thought it'd be the most important thing to kind of start with you guys and get ready for this 2024 year. Because I think the next 90 days or so is going to get pretty busy. And I think it's going to be a lot of people looking for good listing agents. So I wanted to end it about 10 minutes early so I could just kind of answer you guys' questions before I left. I got about 5 minutes, but I'm not in a rush to go. So questions, you guys got anything to add or answer?
Yes.
Question. Yes.
Virtual staging.
Yes.
Have you done?
No. I think it's I think there's a time and a place for it. I thought about doing storyboards where I would have storyboards in the home to actually show it. You know what? Again, I'm just giving you guys my personal opinion. It's always felt kind of artificial, but it's very hard to showcase a home without the furniture in. So I think as long as there's a disclaimer that it's virtually staged so that people don't show up and have that, they kind of back to the principles of the photography, as long as there's not that disappointment, I think it opens up ideas for what a room could look like. I think there's a place for it, but I don't use it. I like to just shoot the home the way that it is.
What about you, Doug?
Yeah.
Not yet, but it's something I'm considering.
Yeah, they're getting good now where it's like really hard to tell.
And I think it is about the disclaimer, right? So
Yeah.
that the public doesn't feel duped when they come in. This is just an example, a suggestion of what this home could look like.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
times that I've done it next to the original photo so that it's like very obvious that like
Right.
this is, and then still keeping it to, I don't like a ton of photos either,
Yeah.
but just like a little bit of flavor of like, I know it's empty or I know this isn't done yet, but if it was done, this is what it would look like to help people envision
Yeah.
the potential that's there.
David's done that.
That did the side by side. Yeah.
Side.
Which and then you're managing
And it
expectations.
says-
Virtually
Virtually
prepared for
staged.
you or
Yeah.
I think we have to put a disclaimer.
Yeah, I think so, just to get away from that disappointment. And I think it's just like ChatGPT. I think there's a place for it. I just haven't gone into it yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's all good. Technology is giving us abilities that we didn't have before. So
I think it's just around you like that, to hire a natural staging company, it's so expensive. It's
Yeah.
crazy expensive, particularly in a slow market when, the property can just sit on the market.
Yeah,
And, that becomes that debate about, well, who's paying for this?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. I think the only thing that would be missing with the virtual staging for me is that it opens up some excitement into the way that the property could look, but I still come back to when they get there, how can we manage those expectations,
Yeah.
which is why I thought maybe the storyboard or something, but yeah, I've had time to think about this.
Sorry, just jump
No,
in.
no.
I think it's about, at least getting to that first step, getting them in the home.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and then you can managing those expectations, but at least you're getting them to the home.
Yeah. So for you, because this would be my question. So when you see like a vacant home, like photos
Yeah.
taken of a vacant home,
Yeah.
is there, like, for the virtual staging, is there a reason that you want to show furniture?
To inject personality. Yeah, I find the average home, people can understand what a dining table looks like or a bed in a bedroom, like,
Right.
So yeah, I like your earlier example when you've got an unusual space and people are trying to visualize, well, how exactly would I utilize that? But that would be the main thing, is to get away from the sterility of some vacant space, particularly if they're newly renovated.
Yeah.
Where it's just can seem very sterile, very cold.
Yeah.
So yeah, just injecting that kind of emotion.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
For weird layouts, I've also done floor plans and put in the furniture of where it's supposed to go when they're weird layouts that are vacant.
Right.
Just to help people visualize, like, oh, there is room for a bed and whatever else in this room.
Hey.
To, like, help them visualize it.
That just kind of reminded me. Have you guys heard of Cubicasa? Nobody? It's awesome. Download that app. It's Cubicasa. I hope I'm not just giving it over to the technology overlords here, because it's like the thing that this thing does. So I used to try to get floor plans done. I had my assistants doing the floor plans. This app uses LiDAR if you have a newer phone. If not, it uses an algorithm with your photos. And you walk through the house and you just scan the baseboards. And when you're done, it gives you, with a 99% accuracy, every single room dimension. It gives you a set floor plan. And it gives you both PDF and images, so it can go onto the exposure. And it costs $9.99. And you pay $5 more, it gives you a 6-hour turnaround. So if you need it like really quick, it's crazy. I did
Sorry, what's it called again?
Cubicasa. So Cubicasa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And I did my first test, I did the Remax office. It was 10,000 square feet. They charged me $9.99 and gave me the whole floor plan.
Do they guarantee you
Sell it back
directors?
to the.
They put on there the disclaimer, it's within 99.9, but it says measurements approximately should not be deemed, so they got that. But I've tested with my own measurements and it's close, very close, like within an inch. So it's cool.
Yes. The home that has a tenant in it, if the tenant is a disaster.
Yeah,
there's-
yeah. I've handled this a few different ways. It depends on who the tenant is. I've done, so usually I try to get the tenant on the side. And I've had, again, this is like scenarios that I've done. I've had talks to the tenant and say, hey, you've been here for a while, just kind of curious here, do you want to stay? They say, yeah. I'm like, okay, so they're gonna have a certain portion that are gonna be in investors. The investors they feel really good about tenants when it shows a certain way. So I usually have a showing plan that I walk my sellers through. But if you guys would like to stay, I can kind of walk you through it a little bit and give you some tips, because we're kind of putting our best foot forward on it. But to be honest, the only one that I've really done that's ever worked is I talked to the seller and we offered them a $2,500 bonus. Make sure that the place is clean when we come through. We'll pay you $2,500 when this thing sells. And money talks, man.
Like a gift card for a coffee shop or something and give that to the tenant before. I know that this isn't.
Yeah, sometimes you've
Go
really
have
got
a coffee
to
on
suck up to
me.
those
and-
tenants.
Yeah, totally. It's all
I
about getting
find
them
that
on the
helps
side.
quite a bit too. It's just like getting a better relationship with the
Because a lot of
tenant.
times
It's
they
gonna
just got their
make-
back up right when you get there. So if you just warm them up and suck up to them.
Here's
a bit,
here's a gift
yeah.
card, like it's on me, go have a coffee, like I know this is a major inconvenience.
And the
for you,
approach,
but-
it's definitely handy if they want to stay,
Yeah.
because you can use that definitely to your advantage and be like, if it's clean, there's a good chance,
Yeah,
can
if
find
you
an
show it
investor that's gonna wanna
nicely,
buy it. Yeah.
people may want you to stick around. If you're not gonna show it nicely.
One day,
What's
turn a
that?
tenant into a buyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
like get in a relationship there. And
In the case that I had, it was like they were really stops, and I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. And we just talked about it, and they're like, well, we'd be happy to flip them $2,500 and get the cleaner in. So the guy that was selling it was an investor, and he spent the money to get a professional cleaner in, and we worked out an agreement with them and said, like, we need it to show this way. If you guys can keep this in, we'll give you $2,500 as soon as it completes. And the tenant was like, yeah. And he did awesome. I think he ended up taking off for a lot of them, but the place showed great, worked well. So it's one thing, depending on what they want to do. Anything else?
I missed the beginning of your thing because I was driving.
we did
Yeah.
the first thing.
Yeah.
I just don't. 6 weeks sold.
Yeah.
What, like, obviously this is the fundamentals of that. But like, what if you're in this, like, do you take like an agreement
For 6 weeks.
for 6 weeks? But what if you're like in the last week of an agreement and you get to your last stage where it's like the worst case scenario, or not the worst case scenario, but say you get an offer a ways off and they're like, well, my bottom line's 550, and
Yeah.
they're at 575 or whatever, and you're within that area.
Right.
What are you doing at that point if you know that your agreement is up at the end of?
You know what? It's just so. Okay, so the 6 weeks came from a few different things. A lot of times people, they don't want to commit heavy. So it was like a way for me to get in and say, you've been on the market. Like really, it started actually because I wanted to go over expired listings when I first did it.
Yeah.
Like, listen, you guys have been on the market for 6 months. Give me 6 weeks. I'll do a 6 week listing agreement. I'll pay everything. You guys follow my process. If at the end of the 6 weeks, we don't have it sold, then I'll just walk. And I was finding my retention rates were high. It was always a risk that I was running. That we might get to the end and this contract might run out. The buyer's agents, and I would talk to them ahead of time, any buyers that are introduced during this period will be allowed in. So just because it's going to lapse for me, I mean, if they bring us an offer and they're interested, it's going to continue on. So I would set expectations on that, but it was just a risk. And I mean, at the start, it was a pretty big risk for me because a lot of the people that called me were really like, they didn't like, they're like, who is this guy? And a lot of people thought I'd buy their house after 6 weeks. That was like the most common call. Like, I don't know. I can't buy your house. So it opened the door. But the whole, so this is an interesting one. The 6 week, I don't do 6 week listing agreements anymore. I did for a while. The reason I did it was I would say originally when I did it, I said after 6 weeks you can cancel, and I would do 90 or 120 days. And I had an assistant, like we refined this a lot over the last 3 years. So we were figuring out what works and what doesn't. And some people wanted the 6 week listing contract. Some people wanted the 6 week cancellation. And Alicia, who was really analytical, would track it. And my days on market was like substantially higher if I had you locked in for 120 days than if I had you for 42 days. And I think it's just human nature. You're going to focus on what's coming up. You got 6 weeks to go. You're going to stay on them more. You're going to talk to them more. And the houses were selling faster. So that's why we made that move to the 6 weeks. Yeah. All right, guys. That's it. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Good seeing everybody in here. It's been a little while. Doug, you're supposed to start that. It's supposed to be a standing. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Thanks for the All right. Thanks, guys. I'll send out all the slides.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Do I just press stop? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.